Look, I opened this jar of rotten baby food, and a butterfly came out.
Wow. Wow. Man, how did you come up with these questions? These are tough. These are really hard questions.
Welcome to the Comedians and Elevators podcast. I've got my guest, Aaron Marcus. Aaron, say hi, introduce yourself, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name's Aaron Market, the guy. I've been an actor for over 40 years, and I pretty much do everything I can get my hands on from TV shows, feature films, something that a lot of people have watched, A Man Called Otto with Tom Hanks, and he was kind enough to save me before getting run over by a train at the train tracks. I do commercial modeling work, TV commercials, voiceover work, and I also help other people who are interested in breaking into the industry or taking their career to the next level. And there are a lot of different programs, and I've got quick tip videos on YouTube. But the best thing to do is really, if you just go to my website, howtoactandmodel.com, you can click on the YouTube icon there, and you'll have free access to over 500 videos. And if you want to get on my email list, you can sign up there as well. Just go to the bottom of the homepage. So that's me.
Awesome. I love it. All right. Well, Aaron, are you ready to get started?
I'm as ready as I'm going to be.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Fair enough. Listen, to my regular listeners, I know you don't like when at the beginning of these conversations I ask you to subscribe. None of us like it. I don't like saying it. I don't like it being in here. But it's frustrating. You know what else is frustrating? It's also frustrating when I look in the back end of the YouTube channel and I see that 56% of you that watch frequently haven't yet subscribed. And I know this because I see it in the comments section. You say things like, I didn't know I didn't subscribe. And that's actually what fuels the show. Basically, it's like you're making a donation to the show. So that's why I ask all the time, because it enables us to build and build and build. And we're going for the long term here. Hit the subscribe button and we'll continue to build this show for you. That's my promise. Thank you to all you guys that do subscribe. It means the world to me. So the whole point of the podcast is to compare and contrast the comic versus the comedian. So I define the comic as any person telling funny jokes versus the comedian who's a funny person telling any jokes. So, Aaron, would you agree that you start as a comic and evolve into a comedian?
Oh boy, that's a tough one because, what you guys do is something that would scare me to death. And and I would never really consider myself a comedian. I guess I would not consider myself a comic. That's for sure. A comedian, yeah, sometimes I have some good lines and things like that, but what you guys do, I find so dangerous. I mean, in a positive way, daring. You guys have such courage. I mean, like for me, somebody writes my lines when I'm doing a TV show or a feature film. You guys are pretty much doing it on your own unless you're hiring a writer, but then you're up there by yourselves. You're standing behind a mic, and if things are not going well and the room is silent, man, you've got nothing to hide behind. It's not like you're in a band and you've got, a lot of other musicians up there and things like that. So, yeah, I guess I would agree. Yeah, and I guess I'm more of a comedian, yeah, than a comic.
Fair enough. Well, I could say that the maybe the scary part is the fourth wall or breaking the fourth wall. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And the other thing too is, you just never know how people are going to react. And you might think something is unbelievably funny, and you try it out at a show, and it's like crickets in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Or you say something that you don't mean in any kind of offensive way. You're making an observation about something, and somebody takes it personally. And now you got to figure out, And once again, I don't know how you guys do it. You got to figure out how you deal with somebody who's screaming at you or, heckling you. And, do you go with it? Actually, I'm kind of curious. What do you do if
Oh,
somebody
how is the sausage made? So the secret, at least how I see it, is that you have 22 layer mask on, right? And it's like, you go to the eye doctor and they're like, which one looks better? This one or this one? This one or this one? And so you got like 22 of these, right? And so you just go right through the list or at least you should, that's the part of the argument of how you develop is, and I would argue that's kind of what's happening in the transition. Comic, you get up there, you just slog through it, tell some jokes, and then you figure out how all these layered masks work. And then you grow from there. Does that make sense?
and, and so have you done both things just depending on like you're talking about the different layers? Sometimes you go right after the heckler and you deal with that person directly, or
So that's a good call out. So most hecklers I've experienced have been other comedians that are either going up
really?
before. Oh yeah, going up before, or going up after. They know how to get under your skin. They're not just some drunk narcissist that just wants to take. I mean, that usually I really haven't seen that, at least where I've been. And so they know exactly how to hit to make it hurt and to make a point. And so there's not much you can do to defend against that. You just gotta kind of roll with the punches. But the issue I think is hearing what people are saying. That's the hard part. And so sometimes everyone else heard it, but you didn't hear it because the energy level's so high and you just didn't. And that makes it hard for to have a back and forth with that. So that's one caveat to that, if that
And
explains
it's
it.
really interesting. And I don't know if it's the same mindset, but I have been at auditions where clearly some of the actors who are waiting to go in and read will purposely say things to an actor to screw him up.
Yeah.
And I remember one example, and I thought this was a pretty good example. It was in New York. I was going to a TV commercial audition, and I was told it's a local commercial that's going to be shot in New York, played in New York. And right before I went in, the actor who was right in front of me, he turned around and he said, "Hey, did you hear what they did?" I said, "No, what are you talking about?" He goes, "It was a local spot. It's a national spot now." And now, when it becomes a national spot, you're talking about a whole lot more money. There's a lot more pressure involved. You're thinking very differently. And I said, "Really, it's a national?" He goes, "Yeah, yeah, they turned it into a national spot." So I walked in, and the casting director said, "Hey, do you have any questions?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm just kind of curious. Is this a national spot now?" And she looked at me like I was crazy. She goes, "Aaron, no, it's a local spot." So the guy was trying to mess with my head
Right.
and mess with my performance. And so I don't know if some of the other comedians are thinking that way or they're just trying to get seen by the audience. So I'm curious, like what you found
Yeah.
that to
Oh,
be the
all
case.
of the above. I mean, there's the trickster component, right? The prank, pranking is part of comedy in a sense. Some people take it like that's their whole style, and they are just waiting for it to happen, and they create that scenario. So,
Beady, beady,
oh,
beady.
absolutely, yeah, it's definitely one of the layers that you got to have a mask for, and it's
Yeah,
actually more than one layer.
and I'm kind of curious, does that sometimes make you feel a little bit more hesitant to being friends and opening up and really sharing your life with other comedians because of who knows what they
Well, it
might
depends
do?
on where it's coming from. A lot of usually it depends on how like the ones that hit the hardest are they're doing it on purpose and they know exactly what they're doing. It's not just narcissism emerging, which is for the most part when it comes out, and it's not that powerful. But the ones that are really hitting hard, they know exactly what they're doing. It almost looks sadistic, and you have to play the masochist role just so so there's balance in the universe. So there's a lot of subtext going on in those scenarios.
It's just so crazy because it's like for you and for me as well. It's like work is hard enough. It's difficult to really have success and to be working consistently. And then you've got some people in this world who will just do these horrible things. It just seems so mean-spirited, and
Yeah.
and it seems like people who maybe just don't have enough self-worth or feel good enough about themselves. They just want to try to make other people, look and feel horrible. And wow.
Well, the only argument I can say on the comedy side is they are doing it for a laugh, right? They are doing it so the audience, it's not just between me and the other person. It's actually for the audience's sake, which is really for the person on stage's sake. But at least there is a actual a kind of an agreement on what the goal is, even if you're doing it and it's really rude or
Uh,
dark or whatever, however far it goes.
uh,
So how about so Aaron, are you ready for the first question?
uh-oh. You're making me nervous here. I never did all that well in school, so
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough. There's no right answer, of course, though. It's all opinion. It's an
I've heard
editorial
that one
page here.
before as I get the D back from the test, but okay.
Oh, how do you get a D on on an editorial? All right. So you didn't fit the format. So the role of persona in comedy. So how much of the comedian's voice is a character versus their real self?
Yeah. Well, once again, I'm coming at this from an actor's point of view, and and this is just my philosophy. And since I'm the one talking, I guess I'm the one who should be thinking about it. But I feel like no matter what character you're taking on, whether it's the actor and you're playing a role or you're the comedian and doing, different kind of voice, it's always coming from something from the person. And of course, you have to adapt, you have to make changes. Look, I've never, killed anybody. So if I'm playing a role where, I'm this bad guy who's doing evil things, I can't take from personal experience and do that, but I can still take some things from myself if I felt angry enough to want to do harm to someone. And so, yeah, there's always a part of the person in no matter what kind of presentation you're making.
You haven't killed a fly in anger? This malicious act
Well,
of squashing
You
it?
know, it's really funny. It's funny you mentioned that. When I was a little kid, I know I'm kind of going off in a crazy tangent, but it sounds like an interesting story here. When I was a little kid, my cousin and I, we had tennis racket or baseball bats, and we would see fireflies, flying around in the summer, and we would take the bat and boom, we would hit the firefly because we thought it was so cool because the like golden yellow beam would just kind of go flying in the air. And we were trying to, it wasn't done out of anger. We just thought it was really interesting to watch this gold thing fly from killing the fireflies. And I'll never forget my grandfather, who died when I was a little kid, but he came out and he said, you know what? Don't do that to them. They're animals. They're, part of life here. Please don't kill them. And so when you're kind of making fun of, killing flies, and when I can, I try if it's in my house and there's a fly flying around, I'll try to grab them and take them outside and do that. So no, that's not really in my nature, but yeah, we always have to find something from ourselves to add to whatever character we're doing, and I think that would be the same for a comic as well.
All right. Speaking of killing, how about punching up versus punching down? So, where do comics versus comedians subscribe to this? And let me put it in some historical context. Did a jealous medieval prince become the first comedian by killing the court jester?
Oh boy. I really don't know. I don't know what the motive was. Could be, sounds like that certainly could be there. I hope that the jester had, at least they extracted enough jokes from the jester so that it was worthwhile. I hope that was the case, but
He stole his
you
material. Yeah.
know, yeah, it just seems like there's enough material out there in this world that we really don't have to steal from other people. Yes, borrow ideas, of course, everybody does that. And you see that with comedians as well, but I don't think you have to kill somebody to get their material or steal their stuff to get their material, or at least just ask. I don't know if you've ever done that. Have you ever heard somebody do something that you really loved and you thought that you could, massage it a little bit and make some changes? Have you ever reached out to a comedian and asked, hey, would I be able to borrow some of that? Because I think it's a great idea.
So personally, that's not my style. I go with it has to be original at all times, even if it sucks. That's my kind of my vein. But
Uh,
But absolutely when you're doing you're doing sets with other comedians and the vibe in the room is all about playing off of previous jokes and it becomes a callback from that. And so if you don't continue to participate in the hot potato, then you're not keeping the game going. So and you got to be on the spot with that. You don't have a joke that fits whatever was going on, but you got to come up with something. Otherwise, you've dropped the ball
yeah.
because that's become the style for the night. So in that
Well, I guess
respect, yes.
yeah. I was going to say it sounds like it's the same as, an improv group where
Yeah.
somebody starts it off and then it's just going around and around. Of course, you're going to pick up from, because if you don't, then you're not listening to other people,
Right, but the
then
problem is you might not be funny. Like you're keeping up with that, whatever the topic was. But now, because to stay on topic, what are you going to do? You can't say what he already said. You got to figure out something new. Otherwise, you look like a
right.
total ass.
Right. You have to make some kind of change. And look, everybody is very different. And so even if somebody killed with a line, if it's not your style, if it doesn't fit you properly, it's just not going to make sense.
Right. So then, is criticizing dead people considered punching down?
Oh, that's a hard one. You know, I guess it really depends on what you say about the person who died. It's interesting. So I had mentioned I do these quick tip videos on YouTube, and
Hmm.
and I just did one about a Academy Award winning actor who just said something so crazy to me on a set. And it was a little bit nasty, and just the person just seemed out of touch with reality with what he was saying to me.
Was it personal to you about you?
Not, no, well, actually, I don't even mind telling you what it was about. We were sitting on a piano bench in the scene, and this is early on in my career, and I was an extra. So, as an extra, you walk in, they tell you, hey, you're going to be sitting here. And I'm sitting there, and the guy started talking to me, and I'm talking back to him, but I didn't know what was going on in the scene. The director doesn't walk over to the extras and say, hey, so here's what's going on in this particular scene. And so the actor just started saying, hey, man, you're really throwing me off here. And I said, he goes, you know what's going on? I said, no, actually, I don't. He goes, well, you got to find out what's. And so he was starting to like yell at me a little bit. So I had to go out and find out what was going on. But 'cause the point of the story was the guy's dead. And I didn't want to mention the guy's name. And then I still wouldn't mention his name because it doesn't matter. The point was the story. So yeah, punching down, I guess, on somebody who's dead. Yeah, I guess if you got something interesting to say about it, and I guess it's also helpful to know that the person's not going to respond to you. They're not going to go out on, social
Oh,
media and do campaigns against you, and it makes it a little bit easier. Maybe family members, I don't know, depending on what you say, but well, I don't know. Just because somebody's not alive doesn't mean you can't say something about them.
yeah. I mean, I'm not scared that they haunt my dreams.
Or haunt
All
your
right.
house.
Right. Yeah. Well, that now we know you really said something they didn't like. All right. So very important question: advertising and self promotion. Who advertises themselves more, the comic, the comedian, or the magician? You know that place where you're not conscious and you're not sleeping either? That's your power bill to the electric company. Right here. I want us to be here with free energy, where the Wardenclyffe Tower meets the Eiffel Tower. But that's not where we are. We are here, where you've got the utility and you've got residential solar. Between these two, we know which one saves you money. This is where we can go in the meantime. But this is where I want us to be now, and this can be done now. So let me deputize you to represent DOSE, Department of Solar Efficiency, and let's get on the podcast to get the message out today. See you soon.
Ooh. Well, I never really see magicians very often in TV spots. Um, that seems pretty rare. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm guessing the I'm guessing the comic. I'm guessing the comic probably promotes himself or herself more than anybody else, much more so than a comedian. I think the comedian, I don't think they feel like they need to. Comics, I think, have to because they've got to get their face and name out there and do it as much as they can.
Absolutely. So then, who survives better in the cancel culture environment? The comic, the comedian, the magician, or the mudslinger?
The mudslinger. Yeah, I think in social media today, unfortunately, I think it's the mudslinger because, and look, it's the same way with advertising as well. Negative stuff is powerful, especially social media. And if you say something nice about somebody, nobody's going to read it. If you say something horrible about somebody, absolutely, it's going to go viral. So, yeah, unfortunately, and it is unfortunate. And it's so interesting because sometimes when I'm thinking of a title for one of my quick tip videos, I have this great idea, and then as I'm working on it, I think, you know what? Unfortunately, it just sounds too real. It sounds too nice. It sounds too specific, and I'm not necessarily sure I'm going to grab people's attention as they're flipping through, their Instagram pages. So, yeah,
All
unfortunately,
right.
I have to say mudslinging.
Okay. So, Aaron, what don't you want me to know about you?
Ah! What don't I want you to know? Um, it's interesting. It's a very interesting question. Nobody's ever asked me that before. There really isn't much that I don't really care what people know about. And I think that I am a little bit unusual in that sense that I'm not trying to be famous. I'm not trying to be well known. I'm not trying to be loved by everybody. And so if you found out something about me that isn't all that interesting, I really don't care. Hey, I walk my dog twice a day. As a matter of fact, my dog's lying oh, you can't see him up here. But yeah, normally I'm out taking a walk at this time. I have a pretty boring life. Um, I guess maybe that's one thing, but I really don't care if you know if you know about it. Um, yeah, I mean, look, my job is TV shows and movies and things like that. Um, but honestly, I live a pretty normal, kind of slow-paced kind of life.
It sounds like heaven. So, how about comedy as commentary? So, when does a comedian cross into being a philosopher or a preacher?
Wow. Wow. Man, how did you come up with these questions? These are tough. These are really hard questions.
They've
Very
evolved.
philosophical.
Yeah.
Um, I guess the difference is when someone is trying to put their own personal views onto other people and have them live the way that they want to live, that's when they become a preacher. And I don't really see that as comedy. That is someone who's just preaching. I comedians who I admire are the ones who share information. And look, I know there's so many different types of comedy, and once again, I'm not a comedian, so I'm not an expert with this stuff. But as an outsider, just from a personal point of view, there are joke tellers. People, that's what they just do these jokes one after another. And they can be unbelievably funny. And then there are people who are more of observers, and they share information from their perspective, but they still aren't, they're not preaching to me. And because I can tell you, I've never liked to be told what to do. And maybe that is something that I don't want people to know about. But I never liked that. You can share your opinion. You can tell me what you like. You can tell me what you want. That's great. And then I'll decide if I can take something from that and learn from it, or if it's something might want to add into my life. That sounds pretty cool too. But when you tell somebody what they should do, nah, that's not good. And that's just like once again, and I don't want to keep harping on the quick tip videos, but even just when I'm doing private mentoring with people or doing workshops, I always let people know, look, this information that I'm giving you is based on my experiences. I'm not telling you it's the only way to do it. I'm not telling you that if you hear somebody else's opinion that they're wrong and I'm right, or I'm right and they're wrong. There are many, many different ways of getting information across, just like you were talking about, the preacher or commentator. There are many ways of doing that. For me personally, don't preach. Just share your experience.
All right. Well, then, is truth treasure in heaven?
Yeah, truth is. Truth is. Um, and this also just goes to personal relationships as well. I mean, taking it far away from comedy for a second. And the fact of the matter is, I can deal with a lot in my personal relationships with people, but when people are telling me things that aren't true, that crosses a line for me. And if I can't trust somebody and I can't depend on somebody, it makes it really, really difficult for me to, stay in a good place with that person.
All right. Speaking of, Aaron, are you ready to enter the multiverse?
Oh boy, you've drained me already. The multiverse. Uh-oh. All right. All right. Is this going to be like, I have four options, A, B, C, or D, or is it multiple choice or?
Well, you're gonna see. So it's board game Zoomcast, play versus performance. So you have to choose an avatar. So if comedy were a board game Zoomcast, are you competing as the colorist avatar, adding tone, mood, and shading, or the Foley artist avatar, building punchlines with soundscapes and timing?
Oh, yeah, I want to add the punchlines. I do. I don't want to just be on the outside building the sets and things like that. It just doesn't interest me. Yeah, I much, much prefer being there and helping to be, I guess, more on the verbal creating end of things. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So then does comedy work better when it's painted vividly or when it's orchestrated sonically?
I like it straightforward. Yeah, yeah. I that's really the way I much prefer it. Right at me.
Okay, so
So
I mean,
so it was either so the first choice was I know the second one was Sonic. What was the first choice?
yeah, vividly, painted
Vividly.
vividly.
Yeah, that's what I was referring to. Yeah, I'm not that deep of a thinker, honestly. And so, yeah, when it's coming and it's very vivid, I can see it, I can hear it, I understand it, it makes sense to me. Yeah, that's what I enjoy. And I'm
All
curious.
right.
I know, look, I know you have guests on, so you get other opinions, but I'm curious, like for you. I mean, look, you're the expert and you're the professional here. What do you prefer?
Well, in the context of the multiverse, you got to pin down something so you don't get lost in the infinite plane, right? So I think sonically would be the way to go,
Hmm.
because that has the most consistency throughout the multiverse. So that's
Oh,
the one I
wow.
would
Okay,
choose.
that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So here on the Comedians in Elevators podcast, we have a tradition where the previous guest asks a question for the next guest. And the previous guest was T.L. Flint. And his question for you, Aaron, is where did you first find the courage to step on stage?
Yeah, yeah. So the very first time, and I wasn't as a comedian, um, but it was in high school. And by the way, I didn't. I know a lot of people grow up wanting to be actors,
Hmm.
and they've done theater all their lives, and that's what I didn't get started in this work until much, much later in life. I was in my late 20s before I even started doing anything. And actually, I used to be a musician, a singer-songwriter, and I did that for 7 years full time. And I remember, so the very first time I was on stage, it was in high school. It was a high school play, and I just thought it'd be fun to hang out with people. Once again, no interest in that. But I think kind of going a little bit deeper into the question
Hmm.
of the courage of standing up, it would probably be as a musician and getting up on stage and performing. And I remember the experience, and something that really helped me a lot overcome my fears with that
Hmm.
was I used to always perform music, not just because I was scared, but it did help. My eyes were closed whenever I performed. Now, when I would finish the song, or we would, because I worked with my brother, and we're talking to the audience, yeah, then I'm looking at people. But yeah, I remember just getting up there and taking a deep breath. And I would find, and I don't know if this happens to you actually, I don't even know. Are you a comic or are you a comedian? I don't know how
I
to
would,
address you, really.
so I would go with comedian.
Okay, so you're a
Mhm.
comedian. So I don't know how you deal with this as a comedian, but for me, when I was on stage, which is different, on stage as a musician, which is different than film and television commercials and commercial modeling work, that kind of stuff, is I would be transported to another place. I'm in the middle of playing a song and my eyes are closed and I'm just like flying somewhere. And when the song was over and I would hear applause, that kind of shook me back into reality because I left. I left this earth for a period of time, for the 3.5 minutes or whatever,
Hmm.
whatever it was. And I'm kind of curious as a stand-up. I mean, I know in the middle of your work, you can't just go someplace else. I mean, unless you're completely bored and you're thinking, hey, what am I going to make for dinner tonight? That would be a bad place to be at, but I'm sure that does happen sometimes. But do you ever like finish a set and once you walk off, you go, "Whew, wow, what an experience." I mean, it's like you felt like you're in another world during that time period, or do you feel like you're always really very much there in the moment?
So there's an energy that can vary, but it's always much higher. I mean, it really, for me, depends on how many people are in the audience. And the higher this frequency energy goes. And, it can be very distracting because you need to maintain or an ego to get words out. Otherwise, it'll be nonsense, right? So you have to have certain level of consistency with your identity. You can't go to another place. If you do, you don't know what's going to happen. And argue, we've seen what happens when someone on stage does do that mentally. Then just someone else is speaking at that moment, and it's not what they wanted to say, right? So we want to avoid that. So, but at the same time, you want to work with that energy. So I don't know if that's answering the question.
Yeah, but I was just wondering if, like, after you've walked off the stage, do you just kind of feel it like a second just went by, meanwhile it was a 30-minute set or a 15-minute set. It just felt like things just flew by. It's almost like you don't even know like what just happened in that moment. You were there, but it's like, did
Yeah,
I?
I mean
Yeah,
that would not be yeah, you got to be in control, total control. If you die because you're tracking the seconds, how I mean, first 15 seconds, you basically have a script, right? And you're trying to stay more or less within it or block it off. So if you lose track of that, you're lost. And
yeah,
yeah, you could
yeah.
at the end get off stage and be like, that was, I mean, that's where the criticism comes in. So you're thinking of it in a good way. You get off and you're like, that was great, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. But I guess like for you though, you're almost like a surgeon. And so you're digging things, you're cutting things, you're thinking constantly, making, shifts depending on reactions of people, or maybe you had a joke in mind and you feel like you need to make a slight change for this particular audience. And so do you get drained after a
Uh,
set? Of course, depending on
no.
the set, but do you ever feel that way?
Well, so for me, it's the opposite. I'm an extrovert, so actually, my energy level is I get energized from that, even if it's a horrible, even if I bomb, it's going to be
Uh-huh.
my energy level is going to be very, very high, and it's actually hard to sleep. So I have to like bring it down. So yeah,
Yeah.
it depends, introvert, extrovert.
And I'm just kind of curious, and I hope it's okay to ask you questions because I think it's just really fascinating. But
Yeah.
when things don't go well on a night for you, what do you do? How do you deal with it? Because I'm
They
thinking like
don't,
for me, if I
they
have a
never go
horror,
well. They never go well. It's always a comedy of errors, right? You're working with your failures. It's a constant failure because if you're trying to be you're trying to be original, at least, well, mostly you're trying to be original. You create new things and you don't know how it's going to ultimately end. You don't know if the energy is going to work with it. So you just got to do it and you got to roll. You know you're failing. You're always failing. It's never success. But you work with the failure, and that's where the funny is.
that's interesting. That's really
Yeah,
interesting.
it's very dark. You have to have you. It's a very dark kind of place that you have to own. It's not a happy place. It's not, not at all.
Yeah. Now, do you feel like you can be because you always hear stories, people, except for maybe Seinfeld, people say, oh, you've got to have a lot of demons, you have to have a horrible upbringing in order to have
Well,
success.
you have to go through. You have to engage with it. You can't ignore it. No, it will come out on stage and it'll take over. You have to work with it in real time.
Mm,
Everyone's seen it happen. Yeah.
wow.
Yeah,
So
you're going
anyhow,
through the full psychological stack, all the way down to the demon. If you're not touching the demon when you're on stage, you haven't done your job. That's how I see it.
but so you don't think that somebody has to have had a tough life. If you just have, a great life growing up and you're a happy person, that's going to make it really tough to be a good comedian or
Um, so here's where the difference I think between the comic and the comedian is you can be a comic without and be technically excellent and not have had this life experience and everyone will be like, yeah, those are funny jokes, you're good, we like you. But for the comedian, you need to have some enough experience outside of being on stage where you can bring that to the stage and also go down to where the demon is on stage. So you need to know it off and on and then show what your off stage demon is like on stage.
Yeah, and I guess it's something that a lot of people can relate to as well, because how many people grow
Absolutely.
up in a, just a perfect kind of childhood and life. And so,
Right.
if you can tap into things that connect, with
Yeah.
other people,
Well,
then
everyone will know when you're bringing your demon on stage. Everyone will know it. And that's where you're like, wow, this is a performance. So
uh-huh.
awesome. Well, Aaron, where can everybody find you online?
Yeah, so the simplest way is howtoactamodel.com. And
Hmm.
also you can follow me on Instagram. It's just Aaron, it's Aaron, R for Robert, Marcus, Marcus. And I post weekly information in the acting, modeling industry world there as well. So yeah, go there and follow me. And if you go to the website, you'll see all the other social media links as well, but especially the YouTube channel because that's something I'm really proud of. Don't make any money off of it, but there are over 500 free, really helpful videos for people.
Awesome. Awesome, Aaron. Well, thank you so much for being my guest. And for everyone, please like and subscribe. And we'll see you in the next one. If you're interested in too much information like in the network state or Mantipus the chicken shit, check out this video. Or is it this one right here? Well, either way. Lizard.